and I have spoken all these words, but for the way we have to go, words are no preparation. There's no getting ready other than grace. My faults have stayed hidden. One might call that preparation. I have one small drop of knowing in my soul. Let it dissolve in your ocean. There are so many threats to it. Inside of us, there's a continual autumn. Our leaves fall and are blown out over the water. A crow sits on blackened limbs and talks about what is gone. Then your generosity returns. Spring, moisture, intelligence, the smell of hyacinth and cypress. Joseph is back. And then Jesus is breathing again. And if you don't feel in yourself the freshness of Joseph, be Jacob. Weep and then smile. Don't pretend to know something you haven't experienced. There's a necessary dying. Very little grows on jagged rock. Be ground. Be crumbled, so wildflowers will come up where you are. Try something different. Surrender. And we're all very aware of what's going on in the world at the moment. And one of the things I read just yesterday pertaining to the wildfires in America is a big Zen center burnt to the ground in Big Sur. And the abbot or the Roshi there said, the only way to learn from this is to see the nature of impermanence in everything. So that's really, I'm thinking about how we respond. And this is an article that I wrote. Just before the current lockdown, I facilitated a workshop based on the work of the great Buddhist environmentalist active, Joanna Macy. That day enabled the 12 people taking part to voice the deep despair and grief about the current state of our world. It was a heartfelt and deeply moving experience. Suffering, powerlessness, rage, grief, fear were all expressed, heard, and honored. Parents expressed fears for the future of their children. The fate of disappearing species and the nature was mourned. People brought photographs of the last polar bear and its baby on an ice floe who were going to drown. All these images that we're bombarded with. People talked about patriarchal values and the suppression of the feminine, and tears were evoked. Sadness and anger were strongly present. And the group then danced and rested in the present moment with the understanding that pain, once acknowledged and appropriately expressed, can be transformed. Pain locked in our bodies were released and energy flowed anew, and love poured outwards from our hearts into the world. And we prayed for the earth and all sentient beings. Now that workshop, it really seems like a lifetime ago. It was a time when we could hug each other, jump in the car, drive for miles, sit happily in a park with our friends and shop wherever we wanted. And then boom, suddenly it all stopped and a global lockdown happened. And no one in their wildest dreams could have imagined that such an event could happen so quickly. And it made me think of the wise words of Chogyam Trungpa, a Tibetan teacher who said in the 60s, the whole world is filling with suffering. And the truth is that since the 60s, things seem to have gone from bad to worse. Economic downturns, mass migrations on an unprecedented level, climate change, and now a pandemic. The list of woes seems endless. And we are currently witnessing a massive man-made global upheaval which is affecting humanity. Nature, and along with it, the demise of many of the great institutions of our time. Everything is shaking and reeling. The financial world has all kinds of problems and lost our confidence. Many nations are crumbling politically, financially, and philosophically, and in so many ways. Undoubtedly, over the next decades, our lives will get more challenged before we see positive results. But I believe good will come. I believe great good is being birthed, and like many births, will be unbearably painful if resisted. And compassion and insight will help us during these difficult times of transition. So what can we learn, and how can we respond wisely to this pandemic and the great suffering, loss and grief it has brought in its wake, with all the pre-existing doom and gloom? Doesn't sound great, does it? But for the last 12 centuries, the Tibetans have had knowledge of semi-secret prophecies attributed to Padmasambhava about the coming of the kingdom of Shambhala. And I think it's worth reading carefully what Chogyam Trungpa says about the core of this prophecy and how it can help us in today's troubled times. These are what are known as the Shambhala Prophecies.
There comes a time when all life on earth is in danger.
Barbarian powers have risen. Although they waste their wealth in preparations to annihilate each other, they have much in common.
And among the things they have in common are weapons of unfathomable death and devastation, and technologies that lay waste the world.
It is now, when the future of all beings hangs by the frailest of threads, that the kingdom of Shambhala emerges.
Now you can't go there because it's not a place. It exists in the hearts and minds of the Shambhala Warriors. And actually, you can't tell a Shambhala Warrior by looking at her or him, because there are no uniforms, no insignia, no banners to declare what side you're on.
Always they move in the land of the barbarians themselves. Now comes the time when great courage is required of the Shambhala Warriors, moral and physical courage. For they must go into the very heart of the barbarian power and dismantle the weapons.
And weapons in every sense of the word. They're going to go into the pits where the armaments are made and where they're deployed, also going into the corridors of power where the decisions are made.
The Shambhala Warriors know they can do this because the weapons are manomaya, which means man-made. This is important to remember. These weapons are made by the human mind, so they can be unmade by the human mind.
Because these instruments of death are not visited upon us by some extraterrestrial force or some satanic deity or some unalterable predestined fate, but they arise from our choices, from our lifestyles. Actually, he didn't say the word lifestyle. Our choices, our habits, our relationships. So these dangers arise are manomaya, mind-made. So they can be unmade by the human mind.
So now the Shambhala Warriors must go into training, and they train in the use of two weapons, compassion and insight.
Compassion, and the other is insight into the radical interdependence of all phenomena.
Both are necessary.
And actually, he did say the word weapons, though I think you might prefer to say tools or implements or resources.
We need the first one because it provides the fuel. It moves us to act on behalf of other beings.
You need the compassion because that provides the fuel. to move you out to where you need to go to do what you need to do. And what it boils down to is not being afraid of the suffering of our world. And when you're not afraid of the pain, then nothing can stop you, you know. But by itself, that's so hot, that fuel. Ooh, that can burn you out.
So we need the second one as well, which is insight into the dependent co-arising of all things.
You need that insight.
It lets us see that the battle is not between good people and bad people,
but that the line between good and evil runs through the landscape of every human heart. And that we are so interwoven in the web of existence that even the smallest act with clear intention has repercussions through the web that you can't begin to see, let alone measure.
Insight alone can seem too cool to keep us going. So we also need the heat of compassion, our openness to the world's pain. Both weapons are necessary to the Shambhala Warrior. That's written by Chogyam Trungpa. And I believe that we Sufis are Shambhala Warriors. And if we wish to be of service at this time, each one of us has to make our own journey, and each of us must find the meaning of love and enlightened society, and how it can be realized. I'm also an independent funeral celebrant, and I've met too many people who are struggling with complex grief and loss issues because of the restrictions imposed by the coronavirus. In the 12th century, there was a great Persian poet called Sa'adi, and his famous words are to be seen etched into the wall of the UN headquarters building. And he says, "Human beings are members of a whole, since in their creation they are of one essence. When the conditions of the time bring a member, meaning a limb, to pain, the other members, other limbs, will suffer from discomfort. You, who are indifferent to the misery of others, it's not fitting you should be called a human being." So Shambhala warriors, as well as Sufis and humanists, know that it's basic wisdom that can help solve our problems. A human wisdom based on compassion, love, and insight. It has nothing to do with formal education, religion, or culture. And it's freely available to each of us if we allow ourselves to tune in and listen with our hearts. Our inner guidance is available to all of us. And this, I believe, is now a matter of urgency. So I believe that each one of us can make a difference. The 2 marks of warriorship, courage and fearlessness, we all have. Don't be afraid to step into who you truly are and let your unique light shine. We need to stand up and be counted for what we truly are. So shine, step out of that which limits you. And all the changes that are happening in our world, I believe, are part of human evolution. If each of us can bring balance to our own lives and work from a place of love, changes at an energetic, vibrational level will occur. Every one of our thoughts, words, and deeds can make a difference. So, can we change the world? I personally am not buying into the media hype that the future looks bleak. The future is bright depending on the way you choose to view it. And in an out-of-control world, our response is something we can control. We can choose to respond with our hearts and our love and be what I believe human beings are, beings of light and love. And Mrs. Tweedie said that we are currents of energy. And I believe that what we're doing in meditation, by resting in loving awareness and sending healing out into the world, is affecting the vibration of the planet. And so many people are doing it. And this pandemic is a great spiritual awakening. And it's forcing all of us to confront our own shadows and our own fears. When people are in lockdown, shielding, or cocooning, or whatever you want to call it, it's almost like we're in our own little cells, having to deal with our own minds. So it's a real spiritual practice and how we respond to this. We can panic and we can get frightened, or we can stay focused, we can stay in our hearts. And we are so lucky, I feel, and it moves me greatly, and you can probably hear it in my voice right now, but I feel greatly moved that I had the great honor to meet somebody like Mrs. Tweedie, because she really did give me so much in terms of understanding, loving, support, and what it is to be truly human. And if I hadn't had Mrs. Tweedie and, you know, come across other teachings and writings which have sustained me, you know, it certainly would have been much more difficult. But, you know, I think what you really learn, having been with somebody like Mrs. Tweedie, she just kept pointing to life, you know, life. And she used to talk about the divine hints, and, you know, reading what's written almost in the, you know, the traces of the birds in the sky or whatever it was. But, you know, life is the teacher, you know, and in a way you have to have a teacher to learn that. And I owe her a great debt, because it's such a blessing. It's a great blessing to meet somebody who's truly enlightened and who embodies love in the way that she did. So I feel we're all blessed, and it was grace that brought us all together. And I'd like to finish with another Rumi poem, if I may. The clear bead at the center changes everything. There are no edges to my loving now. You've heard it say, there's a window that opens from one mind to another. But if there's no wall, there's no need for fitting the window or the latch. Being is not what it seems, nor non-being. The world's existence is not in the world. Something opens our wings. Something makes boredom and hurt disappear. Someone fills the cup in front of us. We taste only emptiness. And Mrs. Tweedie said to me many times, you have to be in this world and not in this world. You have to learn to care and not to care. And it's like living in two worlds. We can see what's going on, and it's not easy what's going on for humanity right now. But we've also been given the gift of a great practice that can help us stay steady and grounded in our heart and continue putting love and healing out into the world.
At the